Here, there's something called the fine-tuning problem. There's actually a lot of different aspects of this that we won't have time to discuss. The universe, it turns out, is a very unlikely place for us to be. It's been compared to the difficulty of taking a sharpened pencil and balancing on its tip for 14 billion years all by itself. As people have dug into the Big Bang model and its implications and predictions, you see people making comments like this. Sir Fred Hoyle, no friend of creationists by any stretch of the imagination, he says some super-calculating intellect must have designed the properties of the carbon atom. Otherwise, the chance of my finding such an atom through the blind forces of nature would be utterly minuscule. A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect has monkeyed with physics, as well as chemistry and biology, and that there's no blind forces worth speaking about. This astrobiological paper. There's now broad agreement among physicists and cosmologists that the universe is in several respects fine-tuned for life. It is fine-tuned for the essential building blocks and environments that life requires. Freeman Dyson said, "The more I examine the universe and the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe in some sense must have known we were coming." Among all the different ways that microstates of the universe can arrange themselves, only an incredibly tiny fraction correspond to a smooth configuration of ultra-dense dark energy packed into a tiny volume. That's a big phrase, but he's basically trying to describe what the Big Bang model requires. The conditions necessary for inflation to begin are extremely specialized and therefore describe a very low entropy configuration. If you were to choose configurations of the universe randomly, you would be highly unlikely to hit on the right conditions to start inflation. Being a little more specific about how fine-tuned we're talking about. A change of as little as 0.5% in the strength of the strong nuclear force or 4% in the electric force would destroy either nearly all carbon or all oxygen at every star, and hence the possibility of all life as we know it. Change those rules of our universe just a bit and the conditions for our existence disappear. Most of the fundamental constants appearing in our theories appear fine-tuned. If they were altered by only modest amounts, the universe would be qualitatively different and in many cases unsuitable for the development of life. For example, if protons were 0.2% heavier, they would decay into neutrons, destabilizing atoms. And since we're made of atoms, that would be a bad thing, in case that wasn't obvious. The emergence of the complex structures capable of supporting intelligent observers seems to be very fragile. The laws of nature form a system that is extremely fine-tuned. What can we make of these coincidences? Our universe and its laws appear to have a design that's both tailor-made to support us and, if we are to exist, leaves little room for alteration. That is not easily explained. It raises the natural question of why it is that way. Add all this up, and some people have calculated that the chances of the universe looking the way it does are 1 out of 10 to the 60th power. So that's a 1 with 60 zeros after it. And as an illustration of how unlikely that is, Paul Davies said, "Suppose you wanted to fire a bullet at a 1-inch target on the other side of the observable universe, 20 billion light years away. Your aim would have to be accurate to that same part in 10 to the 60th. Since he said this, other people have realized it's actually a worse problem, and the number is now up to 10 to the 120th. Our universe appears surprisingly fine-tuned for life in the sense that if you tweaked many of our constants of nature by just a tiny amount, life as we know it would be impossible. Some of the fine-tuning appears extreme enough to be quite embarrassing. For example, we need to tune the dark energy to about 123 decimal places to make habitable galaxies. This is what 1 to the 120th power looks like. So 1 out of that number is the chances that the universe we see could have formed at random. Professor Susskind, again, no friend of creationists, has said this is a cataclysm for physicists. And the only way that we know how to make sense of it is through the reviled and despised anthropic principle. The anthropic principle is the idea that the universe must be suitable for us. And you can tell what he thinks of it by the adjectives he just used, right? Secular cosmologists do not like the implications that the universe appears to be designed because what does that imply? A designer.